All right, for this explainer, we're going to shrink ourselves way, way down to the microscopic level to understand the incredibly complex and absolutely vital world of the cell membrane. These are the true gatekeepers of life itself.
So, think about this for a second. How does a cell, the fundamental unit of you, me, everything, actually survive? It all comes down to controlling its border, that smart, selective barrier that separates the finely tuned world inside the cell from the chaos outside. Here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the border itself. Then we'll talk about just going with the flow using diffusion. From there, we'll get into the more complex stuff, the special access channels, the uphill battles of active transport, and finally, a clever trick called secondary transport. Let's jump in.
Okay, first things first. Before we can even talk about how things get across the membrane, we really need to appreciate the fundamental challenge. We have to understand the world our cells live in and this incredible barrier they put up against it.
You see, the cell membrane isn't just some flimsy bag. It's a sophisticated wall made of a lipid bilayer. Basically, it's fatty. And what do we know about fat and water? They don't mix. So right there, you have a fantastic natural barrier that keeps water-soluble stuff out. But that's also a problem, right? How do you get the good water-soluble nutrients in? Well, that's where these specialized transport proteins come in. They're like bouncers at a club, creating very specific alternative ways to get across the membrane.
Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Just look at these numbers. For sodium, it's over 14 times more concentrated outside the cell than inside. And potassium, it's the complete opposite, a whopping 35 times more concentrated inside. This imbalance is not an accident. The cell is constantly working, burning huge amounts of energy to maintain this difference. This gradient is basically a battery, and it's essential for powering everything from your thoughts to your muscles.
Okay, so let's start with the simplest way to cross that border: diffusion. Think of this as the lazy river of transport. It's passive, driven by the natural random jiggling of molecules, and it requires absolutely no extra energy from the cell.
You've seen this in action a million times. You put a sugar cube in tea, and without even stirring, it slowly spreads out. That's diffusion. The molecules are just bouncing around, and the net result is they move from an area where they're all crowded together to an area where there's more space. It's all driven by their own internal kinetic energy.
But, of course, it comes in a couple of flavors. You've got simple diffusion, that's for tiny molecules like oxygen that can just slip right through the fatty membrane, no problem. Then you've got facilitated diffusion. This is for molecules like glucose that are too big or charged to cross on their own. They need a helper, a carrier protein that grabs them and pulls them across. Now, both are still moving downhill, but that need for a helper means facilitated diffusion has a built-in speed limit.
And this chart shows that difference perfectly. See simple diffusion? The more stuff you have, the faster it goes. It's a straight line. But look at facilitated diffusion. The rate climbs, but then it hits a plateau, a ceiling we call Vmax. Why? Well, it's because all the carrier proteins are busy. It's like a toll booth on a highway. It doesn't matter how many cars are backed up. You can only process them as fast as the booths can operate. The system is saturated.
Let's move on to the really exclusive pathways, the highly specialized protein channels. These aren't just holes in the membrane. They are like VIP-only tunnels, and they are incredibly picky about who gets in.
I mean, this is just amazing. A potassium channel is about 1,000 times better at letting potassium through than sodium, and it all comes down to a perfect molecular fit. Inside the channel, there's something called a selectivity filter. It's designed to strip the water molecules off a potassium ion and let it slide through. A sodium ion, even though it's smaller, just doesn't fit the filter the right way, so it gets rejected. It's like a key that's just slightly the wrong shape. Now, these VIP tunnels aren't just open all the time. That would be chaos. They have gates. Some are voltage-gated, which means they're electric. A change in the charge across the membrane flips them open or closed. This is the whole basis for how your nerves fire. Others are chemically gated. They need a specific molecule called the ligand to bind to them, kind of like a key turning in a lock. It's all about precise control. So far, we've only been going downhill, with the flow. But now we get to the really hard work, moving stuff against its concentration gradient. This is the uphill battle, and it requires the cell to spend some serious energy.
Yeah, this is exactly like pushing a boulder up a hill. The natural tendency is for it to roll down, so to move it up, you have to put in work. For a cell, that work comes from its universal energy currency, a molecule called ATP. We call this primary active transport.
And the absolute superstar of this process is the sodium-potassium pump. This little machine is working non-stop in pretty much every cell in your body. It's a beautiful cycle. 3 sodium ions from inside hop on. This triggers the pump to burn an ATP molecule for energy. That burst of energy causes the pump to change shape and spit the sodium ions out. Now, in its new shape, it's a perfect fit for 2 potassium ions on the outside. They bind, which causes another shape change, and they get released inside. Then the whole thing resets.
And notice, it's not an even trade. It's 3 positive charges out for only 2 positive charges in. This is critical. It means that with every cycle, the inside of the cell becomes a little more negative. That makes the pump electrogenic. It actually helps create an electrical voltage. It also is a master controller of cell volume, preventing cells from swelling up with too much water.
Okay, so the cell spends all this energy creating that massive sodium gradient. But it's super resourceful. It uses the energy it just stored in that gradient to power other transport processes. It's like recycling energy. The best analogy is a hydroelectric dam. By constantly pumping sodium out, the cell has built up a huge reservoir of potential energy. All that sodium wants to rush back into the cell, so the cell can just open a little gate and use the force of that inbound rush to get other work done. One way it does this is with co-transport. Here, a substance like glucose literally hitches a ride. The transport protein is designed so that a sodium ion can only come through if it brings a glucose molecule with it. The powerful downhill rush of the sodium provides the energy to drag the glucose uphill into the cell. They move together in the same direction.
The other method is countertransport. Think of this one like a revolving door. The energy from a sodium ion rushing in is harnessed to push another substance, like calcium, out. One comes in, one goes out. They move in opposite directions, all powered by that original sodium gradient.
And if you need any more proof of how important this is, just look at this. In your nerve cells, the ones doing the thinking, up to 70% of their entire energy budget is spent on one thing, running the sodium-potassium pump. That's a massive energy investment, and it just shows that this process underpins everything we do.
So when you pull back, you realize something pretty profound. Life isn't about being in a state of rest. It's not about equilibrium. Life is a dynamic, constant, and incredibly energetic struggle against equilibrium. It's this beautiful, organized process of maintaining imbalance, all happening at the border of every single cell in your body.